So I'm sitting in my friend's car just outside of Tooting Broadway station in South London. And I said to him, you know what? I think I'm going to take this job. And at the time, it was the biggest gamble of my career. I was going to leave the comforts of my old job at the BBC to work for a social networking site. Now, today, that might seem like a good idea. But in 2006, the idea seemed crazy. But before I finish off that story, I should introduce the episode. So this is Andrew Davis from thinkingoutsidetheblog.com, where I show you how you can use online or digital or the internet, whatever you want to call it, to build your business, make money online, or get a job. Stroke, climb up the corporate ladder if you are in a job. Now, my number one objective is to show you how to do a number of different things, but in under 10 minutes, because time is your biggest asset and I respect your time. Now, if you haven't been listening to the previous episodes, please go back and listen, because what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up the whole series on what I'm going to teach you, but there are 4 key episodes that you need to listen to kind of get an idea, because when I'll be telling you tips and tricks and strategies and tactics, 9 times out of 10, I'll be throwing back to one of these 4 episodes. So, the key episodes are the so what factor. Now, this looks at the reason why you're doing digital. I then went into an episode called the TAN model, and the TAN model was a framework on how you can make money online. Then I went into another episode which was called the content quadrant, which is how you can market and promote yourself and turn your hobby into a business. And this one is about me, who I am, why I'm here speaking to you, and how my experience in this digital world can potentially help you achieve whatever you want to achieve. Now, I've only worked online. I graduated university in 2000, showing my age there, and I'd done the typical thing, wanting to work in the music industry, got my CV out, gave it out to all the record labels. They would say to me, if they did reply, we need 2 years experience, and I'm like, okay, I've been at university for the last 2 years, how am I going to get a job, etc., etc. And I'm sure there's been a few of you listening to this that will kind of understand where I'm coming from. But my first break really was working for a company called Chat Moderators, and they used to moderate chat rooms and forums for a number of different companies. And the first chat room or forum I looked after was for the TV show Pop Idol. I don't know if anyone remembers Pop Idol with Gareth Gates and Will Young and Darius and Simon Cowell's first real TV show. And I used to moderate mainly the chat rooms there. So Antidec would say, go to itv.com/Pop Idol to chat to the contestants, and I'll be there looking after it and moderating it. I then started moderating the chat rooms for Liverpool Football Club. I'll be honest, I'm not a Liverpool supporter. They just paid well. I went with the money. I'm not going to lie. And then I worked for Sony PlayStation and Friends Reunited. Who remembers that site? Friends Reunited. So I was doing that for about a year, and then my mum and dad were like, get a proper job, because working on the internet wasn't a proper job around about 2001, 2002. And I was online one day and I saw that Radio 1 was opening up a new digital station called Network X, and they were looking for staff. Cut a long story short, I ended up getting a job working for Network X, which eventually became BBC Radio 1 Extra. And I used to produce radio shows at the BBC. Now, I was doing this job for about 4.5 years. An amazing job. Met pretty much all the musicians and DJs you can think of. And I learned a number of things at the BBC. 2 of the things I'll be telling you about throughout my episodes will be how to create digital content, but also how people can find you online. Because at the BBC, we're not allowed to advertise. Everything has to be editorial. So we really had to focus on how can people find our digital content. And that's something I'll be talking about throughout. Now, this takes me back to where I started at the beginning. Because I was at the BBC and I was doing a show in San Francisco. And I was approached then by a small startup that had just been bought by Rupert Murdoch for about $600 million. And they were about to launch in the UK. And that's why I decided to take the biggest gamble of my career. And I said, you know what? I'm going to leave the comforts of the BBC. And at the time, I was working on all the hip-hop shows. And I love hip-hop. Hip-hop is pretty much my life. And I was working on the hip-hop shows to leave that to work for Myspace. I don't know if anyone remembers Myspace. And that was the biggest gamble of my career. And that's why I was telling my friend in Tooting Broadway, South London, you know what? F it. I'm just going to go for this job. And it was the best decision I ever made because I understood digital. I'd always worked online, but this put me into the social networking or social media world at a very early stage. This was 2006. So this was when Facebook was only available to students. Most of YouTube's traffic was on MySpace, and a tweet was just something you heard from the birds. So I'm actually considered one of the old guys in this particular space, especially in the UK. Now, I learned a number of things at MySpace. When I joined, there was probably about 50 million people on the site, and we took it in the space of a year, say, to about over 200 million. So I sort of rise, but a year later, we probably lost about another 180 million, so I sort of fall. I kind of got out halfway between that. But there's a number of things I learned at MySpace that I'll be telling you. One of them is how to build a conversation online. And that's key, how you can get people to talk about what you're doing. So I was doing MySpace for a number of years. I was there for 2.5 years. And towards the end, everything was going well. I was winning awards. I was being taken all across the world. I was having the most amazing time of my life. And then bam, I ended up having problems with my hands. It eventually became what's called repetitive strain injury, or RSI. And I basically couldn't type. I couldn't really use my hands. So depending on who you speak to, it's a problem with the nerves. And it's something I still have today. But what I got out of that is understanding how to do all this digital stuff quickly. Because to me, if I was taking a long time doing a lot of the stuff, I'm in pain. Still to this day, I'm in pain. So how can I get to the point or get somebody to take action or whatever I'm trying to achieve quickly? And that is why I'm very big on, some people might call it hacking, some people might call it shortcuts. I'm just calling it just being productive. And since I left MySpace, which was January 2009, I have been training and consulting many companies. I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world across all industries. I've worked with the KPMGs, the O2s. I've worked with film studios, football clubs. I've worked in schools. I've created the first course that was connected to GCSE English in schools, where we got kids that were D grades. We got them C's, B's, and in some cases A's. I've worked with so many charities. I even sat on the advisory board for Ofcom for about 4 years. My very, very, very corporate role. But I spent my whole time answering one question, which was, so what? And that is really what I focus on a lot. And that's, if you haven't listened to it, go back to that. So a lot of what I'll be talking about throughout these series, throughout each episodes, I'll be throwing back to one of the 4 foundational episodes. Whether it be the so what factor, whether it be the TAN model, whether it be the content quadrant, or whether it be about myself. And even with the repetitive strain injury, I'll talk about that in another episode, and how my experience with that can actually help benefit you and how you can save time. Okay? So that's the foundational episodes finished. So as of next episode, we're going to get into the real actionable stuff for you to use to help grow your business, make money online, or get that job, climb the corporate ladder. Okay? Until next time, I'll speak to you.